All right, everyone, how are you? Welcome to this week's episode of our podcast. It's called Is Breakfast Included? Thanks for stopping by. On the show this week, Lisa and I sit down and talk with guitar tech Sara Higgins. Now, Sara brought us up to date. She hasn't been teching that long, but she has been teching long enough that she's been very in demand in this industry. She talked to us about getting into it, the ins and outs of being a woman in this industry, and the things she has to put up with. Anyway, she also dropped a bombshell on us of her other side gig or main gig, but it was really interesting. It was a lot of fun getting to know Sara, and I hope you enjoy it. Let's check it out.
My name is Sara Higgins. I am a guitar tech out of Kenosha, Wisconsin. Um, I originally started out as a cello player for 15 years. I toured internationally doing that. And then I saw a super cool band called Judas Priest, and I saw Richie Faulkner playing. And I was like, man, maybe I should learn how to play the guitar. And I pretty much got into playing and teching from there. But yeah, I've worked with a lot of cool bands. I just went out with Accept and KK's Priest, actually.
Okay.
Dance Gavin Dance. I've gotten to fill in for Limp Bizkit. I help out a lot with Fred with Motley. And yeah, I've gotten a lot of really cool opportunities. So I'm still kind of growing.
Cool. So you said Richie Faulkner. So that was a recent incarnation of Priest, yeah?
Yeah, I've been teching, gosh, that had to have been 2018 or so.
Uh-huh.
And I had zero interest in guitars, and I saw him play and I was like, man, that's the coolest thing I've ever seen. I've seen rock bands. I was always into that kind of music. I actually, when I was a cellist, I did both classical and heavy metal. My mentor was the founding violinist of the Trans-Siberian Orchestra, Mark Wood. So he kind of like showed me that there's another side to playing orchestral strings. And so, I mean, I'm a big Randy Rhoads fan too. So the first song I got to learn on cello was Crazy Train, which was awesome. But yeah, I saw Richie, and that was just kind of it. I was like, man, maybe I've been making fun of guitar players for too long, So yeah, I love his playing, and I've noticed a lot of my favorite players, their top influences are Randy, which I think is what draws me to it. It's the classical, it's the technique and everything, So yeah, nothing too crazy.
I don't think it's ever too long to make fun of guitar players.
I still do it sometimes. I don't know, like, music theory and stuff I refuse to apply it to guitar because then it makes it less fun for me. But I definitely, Fred and I have had some nice conversations about music theory and, me teaching him the circle of fifths and all that stuff. And, so I still like to trip him up.
Do you come from a musical family, or
my mom was actually a country singer down in Nashville, very successful. She did like the Star Search.
Yeah.
And she had a contract with the Warner Brothers that she ended up turning down because she had 3 kids and didn't want to tour. So my brother plays guitar and sings country. So I come from a country family, and we're originally from East Tennessee. So I come from a very country family, and then I'm just all in on the rock and the metal scene. That seems to be kind of my lane more than anything. And I did do the Kenny Chesney tour this year. I worked for Uncle Cracker, which made me never want to work for a metal band ever again. But yeah, it was pretty cool to kind of merge those. So, but no, my family's semi-musical. Nobody's taken it as far as I have, though, except for my mom, obviously, but I'm not an artist. So it's a little different. We're in different sides of the industry that we're running through.
Yeah. So you grew up as a prominently a country music fan? Or what was the most
country, Hank Williams and Johnny Cash and more artists of that lane. And we have this big thing called Country Thunder up here in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
And I've I've attended that a few times in my day, but yeah, it never really was my main genre. I hop between any genre you can think of, though. I'll listen to anything.
Yeah, I did Country Thunder with an artist I used to work for. 2
Did you
years.
like it?
Yeah, it was cool.
Did you do it up here in Wisconsin?
Yeah, we did. It was yeah, I believe so. I can never remember where these shows are. That's just you just remember.
You would know because it would have rained and stormed all 3 days of it. Because it does it every single year. They try to change the weekend a little bit to avoid it, and every single year it just dumps on it. So it's and it's in a big cornfield too, so it just makes it awful. But it's a fun experience at least once.
Right on. So your mom was a country singer. Your brother played guitar. Do you, other than cello, did you play guitar, or is it just something that you picked up after you started working on them?
So I played a little bit like acoustic. In school we had classes, like I was in choir and everything, and we did some classes where we learned how to play like chords. I never really was interested in it. I thought it was boring, wasn't my thing. And so I actually started playing, and after I saw Judas Priest, and part of it was like a competition to show my brother that I could play better than him, honestly. And then also my first guitar was a Jackson Rhodes with a Floyd, and I couldn't tune it. So that's what actually really kickstarted me teching, was I couldn't tune my guitar, my only guitar I have.
Yeah.
And so I had all my friends, I was in like a cover band. I was playing cello in it, and we play everything from Elvis to Slayer. So they got me a guitar. They're thinking that maybe I could learn that. And the Jackson Rhodes, they sit up here, so it's a little closer from cello, and then I gradually brought it down. Now I'm a Les Paul player. But yeah, so I was getting very frustrated with it. It was annoying that I couldn't even tune my guitar. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I had all of my friends bring me their guitars with Floyd Roses, and I took every single one of them apart and put them back together and set them up. And until I was good at it. And
right on.
It's kind of just been super downhill from there when you think about it.
Downhill.
To this day, that's the first question I ask when I get called about a gig is,
can you do a Floyd?
Why I say, do they have Floyd Rose on their guitar? I turn down gigs because of that.
Really?
It's not because I can't do it. It's because I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
It's I get
called so often for these guys who have only Floyds because they cannot get somebody who can do one.
Yeah.
And it's with Accept, they're all running Floyds. And, Wolf was very happy with it. We ended up parting ways during the tour for other reasons. But it's every single time, man. They're like, can you do a Floyd? I'm like, yeah, of course I can do a Floyd. Nice. And it's, all right, you're here. Come on, let's do it. And then they,
I guess in the 80s it was a pretty mandatory thing. But it's just a specific guys out there now that are using them, and I stray away from them. It's just because my patience level is not.
Yeah. You'll see, I have a lot of patience when it comes to Floyds. I don't have patience when it comes to attitudes. It's kind of where my issues lie, is when, because I don't know what it is about metal players. I turn into like their punching bag, which I know is pretty common for techs to be kind of like the outlet of anger with artists, which is fine. I don't mind if it's not directed towards me, but there's a line where it's disrespectful, and I have gotten very good at drawing that line, and a lot of artists don't like it, and some of them do, some of them don't. I've got artists that I drew that line with and went toe to toe with, and they're my best friends now. Then I've got other ones that I quickly was off that tour, but I always get an apology. But
it must be hard.
I don't have tolerance.
It must be hard being a woman in a male-dominated field, I would imagine. And do you face challenges with dudes? Kind of.
Yeah. That? It's the biggest issue, honestly, is if a wife doesn't feel comfortable with me being there. That's the number one thing that happens is somebody's wife or girlfriend feels unhappy or intimidated with me being there. And, I worked for a band last year that happened. And also I can't play. I'm not a virtuoso. I can't play the best, but in my eyes, if I'm doing the work the best, you're not paying me to get up on stage and play. And so that one was kind of a twofold where the artist didn't like that I, wasn't a amazing player like him. And also, his new girlfriend didn't like the idea of him touring with a woman, even though there's other women on the crew, but you're kind of their,
Yeah.
you're the right hand man. So
Yeah.
that's a big issue. I've had it a couple times where they'll make passes. Usually it's pretty fine. Like, it's like whatever. And I tell them, no, I'm working. I'm here to work. I'm not here to, do any funny business. Also, I've got a boyfriend who, you guys know him. So it's like most of the time they know him. I bring him and everything. And that's something that really grosses me out and I don't like, but it's more like they think they can get away with talking to me, like I'm dumb. So, or they kind of doubt my abilities. That's usually like the bigger part. Now, thankfully, I've been able to build my resume enough to where I'm a lot more respected and sought after by a lot of artists. They immediately respect me when I get there. But it does still happen. It still happens where they're like, "Oh, well, you're nobody," and I'm like, "Okay."
Yeah. You're still gonna
usually small bands.
Yeah.
It's never my big guys.
Did you have any female role models or anyone to kind of show you, like, this is how you handle yourself, or you just had to figure it all out on your own?
Well, I've always worked in male-dominated industries. I owned a brewery for a long time, and that's super all men. It was
Dudes,
just me, and I was a brewer, and I also worked in the automotive industry for a while. And I also have two brothers. I don't have sisters. So I've got two older brothers, and I've never had too much of a problem, like, knowing how to handle myself in those situations. And honestly, I haven't come across a lot of women that were helpful in that sense on the road. When I worked for Uncle Cracker, their keyboard player, Marina Lacoste, she's from Quebec, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And she showed me a lot about how to really put your foot down. I mean, she's French Canadian, so that French side of her would come out, and it was pretty fun to watch. But she was a big activist for me to not take stuff like that. You know what I mean? So she kind of told me, like, hey, you don't have to take that. So, like, you don't have to let people walk all over you and talk bad to you. So that's kind of when I started sticking up for myself a little bit more.
Yeah. Cool. There's a fine line coming into a gig that being the new person on the crew, and you don't want to ruffle any feathers. You don't want to make it look like you're difficult, because that happens with everyone. But then, there is that fine line of, mistaking your kindness for weakness.
Yeah. Well, and that's another thing too, is like a lot of times I'm the new person on the crew, and I'm the only woman.
Yeah.
And so it's like they usually like tiptoe around me, but every once in a while you'll get somebody who's just like, "Oh, you're nothing. You can't do this job the way my friend does this job," or, but I'm very, very grateful and lucky enough to have a crew of friends. I mean, like just a good support team. Like Fred Kowalo and Willie G and Takumi. And, I have all these people who are just pedaling behind me and trying to just be like, no, she knows what she's doing. She's not dumb. Like, I was on the Kenny Chesney tour. Takumi was doing Zach Brown.
Yeah. So
Takumi and I got to work together, which I thought was really fun. I haven't gotten to work. I probably never will work with Fred, but we don't play nice together. But you
guys bring a whole nother aspect into that.
we had an incident at Wembley last year, so poor Rick Allen had to kind of mediate a little bit. We argue a lot when we're together. You can't mix like the relationship with the I don't know. It's kind of a I don't like working with somebody I'm with. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah,
Just because it's more room for fighting. It's a lot more room for fighting, and you're always with each other. And I'm like, sometimes I'm happy if you're on tour and I'm on tour. We're both
yeah,
busy. We both know what's going on,
yeah,
But Willie's another person I would really love to work with. I think he'd be a
yeah.
lot of fun. We could both complain together. I love Willie so much. And he lives here in Chicago, so I get to see him every so often. But yeah, I have a
We're,
really good team of supporters, which is nice, and I think it's helped a lot.
yeah. Would you would you pick Takumi's brain every day?
No,
You wouldn't? I
no.
do. I still do.
Usually it was him coming up to me, asking me why I'm doing everything, and I would tell him because I knew why he was doing it. Fred does the same thing.
Yeah.
But there'd be sometimes like Takumi's got a reputation to uphold. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And but he was always very nice to me. I have to say, he's always
Yeah.
very nice to me, and he always has been. He always will be. He'll text me, like, "Hey, I found this gig," and I'm like, "That sounds terrible. No thanks."
Yeah. He's a great guy.
Yeah, I know. I love Takumi very much. He was very helpful for me. Him and Chad Weaver in Chesney's camp and Dave Graff. Those three were the most helpful people for me. I had never been on a stadium tour, so it was a lot easier than I could have ever hoped. But it, they were just the most helpful people. If I had any questions about anything, I had Willie's Pelican, which is just a nightmare to deal with when I first went out there, and I ended up getting a different one, but they would let me use their work boxes if I needed to, or if I couldn't find a tool right away or something was going on, like they would step in and help. They had no problem with that.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of fun. Takumi was the most helpful though out of everybody, I will say. I ended up being the only tech on the tour. The other tech had a medical issue and had to leave. So it ended up just being me for the rest of the run. And Takumi was nice enough to lend his hands to do handoffs. And at the last song, he would take guitars. So that was very gracious and nice of him to do. But
Yeah, that sounds like him.
yeah.
Did that change your mind about? I mean, I've done big country stadium tours like that, and it's a completely different world than the metal world. Did it make you want to be like, hey, maybe I'm in the wrong genre?
Yes, 100% yes. I got treated like a human being, and I got paid fairly. So, and also it was fun. That was the only time I've ever had fun on tour and didn't feel like beyond stressed out the whole time. And I mean, part of it was because of Marina. And the other part of it was just they treat people like people. They don't treat them like servants. So, yeah, I have toyed around with only taking country gigs now. I have a couple friends in the Chase Rice camp, and they've told me, like, learn how to do drums, and you'll be golden. And I'm not a drummer, but I'm also not a guitar player, so I'm learning how to change heads and tune them and everything right now. So, yeah, I would love to do country and only do country if I can help it.
And you can. I mean, you're right there in the area. Most of those country guys, they want you to be Nashville based, but you're
Yeah,
not
and
far.
I did live in Nashville for a while. I could never find work. And then all of a sudden I move up here and everyone's like, "Hey, I thought you lived in Nashville. We need somebody." And I'm like, "Really?" As soon as I moved back up to Wisconsin, it was like my phone's blowing up with them looking for techs. So I don't know if I just lived there at the wrong time and moved back prematurely, but yeah, it was just that's not the place for me anyway.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite gig that you've worked at or a place that you've traveled to that
I will say that Chesney tour was definitely like overall my favorite tour. I get to help out with I get to help Fred a lot with the Motley stuff with like Nikki. I know he told you on the podcast he did with you about the Nikki bass that he did not help with, but He attached it to me. And also, I just want to say something. I've never painted a guitar in my life. That was the first time I've done it. I worked at Gibson Custom. I was in the final assembly. Uh, he was so excited to show me that. He was like, "Oh, just keep watching it. Just keep watching it." I'm like, "Man, you really like made me just sound like some stranger or something. Like, wow, you sound like you didn't even know what I've done." But yeah, no, we did that at Billy's shop, which I love Billy, and that was such a fun experience to do with him. But yeah, it was a lot of back and forth about using spray paint and then also not sanding the guitar down. So
Yeah.
that guitar is still sticky to this day. But Nikki loves it, and I knew he would. I told Fred, I was like, "Man, you got to send him a picture of that. He's gonna love that. He's 30, you know. He likes stuff like that. You know, he likes the rough and you can tell in his photography that he likes stuff like that. But no, I'm very grateful for Fred to let me do that, because that's probably my biggest accomplishment, I would say. And I love getting to work with Nikki. I help with the meet and greets and stuff. I usually take the photos of people in the meet and greets and get the guitars ready, and help Fred get the guitars ready and everything. So that's it's more of like a fun pastime thing for me to do. But that is one of my favorite camps that I get to kind of be involved with. And but yeah, the Chesney tour, that one's for sure
It's a lot of fun. I did Chesney years ago with Pat Green.
Yeah.
And his camp is they do treat you like humans.
Yeah, they're too much fun. I had too much fun on that. You know, there's no rules. It's just, oh, we're here to have fun. We're here to put on a good show, but you have to be having fun to put on a good show, is like their mentality, which I've never seen before. So it was like I was stepping into a new world or something.
Yeah. I follow you on Instagram, and I saw that you've done a few relicking jobs. Do you enjoy relicking guitars?
Yeah, when does this podcast come out? After Christmas?
It's going to come out, after Christmas.
Okay. I think I'm working on one for Fred right now. I've got an 89 Les Paul Custom. And Fred's not a huge fan of relicking, so I'm doing it very minimally. But that's his Christmas present. But yeah, I enjoy doing it. I like shaving guitar necks the best, because I hate painted necks, which is kind of funny, because I was doing that, and then I met Fred, and I was like, "Oh man, you're the guy who did Zach's necks, huh?" So we kind of traded. We've done them together even since, but we've kind of traded, like, "Oh, this is what I do. Well, this is what I do," and but yeah, so I'm doing this 89 for him. But I don't do it often. I'm not. It's too much time, and I do have like a day job as well. So
yeah. How do you handle high pressure moments during a gig? Like, when something goes wrong, do you keep your cool, or do you,
I am one of those.
I'm a little bit of both.
Yeah. I mean, it's very rare that you can tell, like, that something's gone horrifically wrong, like, by looking at me. But when nothing's going wrong, it's like I'm having a panic attack. It's like, it's so weird, where when the pressure's on, it's like, okay, like, I am totally unstressed. I'm unfazed by it. I just kind of run and get whatever needs to be done. Now, there have been instances where it's like I've got an artist screaming in my face as it's happening, and usually I start laughing. That's kind of like my shut down, is I start laughing, which is such a bad thing to do when somebody's like pissed. But I am a big, like, nervous laugher, which is the worst time.
That's the worst characteristic to have in a high pressure situation.
Usually that's what's happening. Or I make a lot of jokes too. When I'm nervous or I'm stressed, I am making jokes about it. And, a lot of people really don't like that too. It's just like a coping mechanism. I don't know. Trauma mechanism. I don't know what it is, but I will sit there and I will make jokes. Like, I'll be fixing it, but I will be sitting there making jokes and laughing while I'm doing it. Yeah. And like trying to like calm whoever's pissed off down. Because it's like, it's no big deal. It happens. It's live music. It things go wrong. It's not always my fault. If it is my fault, I'm the first person to tell you it's my fault.
Yeah.
But, I just, whatever. Okay.
My guy tends to scream a lot, and people say, like, why was he screaming at you? But he wears in-ears.
Oh yeah.
And so he thinks I can't hear either. So he's just screaming it so I can hear it over my in-ears, but he doesn't notice I pop it out and he's just screaming in my ear.
I do that too. I love that. When it's
I'm like, he's
okay,
not screaming. He just thinks I can't hear him because there's a concert going on.
Yeah. No, I sometimes if I know I'm getting yelled at in a bad way, I'll just keep them in.
Yeah.
What are you gonna do?
Yeah.
If I can't hear it, I don't know.
What was the first thing you learned when you started teching? What was the first thing you learned that you you were completely ignorant about? Like, you know, as a fan.
I want to say I had never stagehand before, and I went on my first tour, and not even have been, knew nothing about. I mean, I knew like the basics. You know what I mean? I knew how to coil cable. I knew how to do all that, but I had never in my life been a stagehand, and that screwed me so bad. Going on a tour, not knowing how anything works. I don't know lights. I don't know anything, and yeah, that I would say anything production wise, I knew nothing about.
Yeah.
And since that first tour, immediately after that first tour, I went and do you know the rave up in Milwaukee?
The
Eagles Ballroom.
Yeah.
It's right across from the Ambassador.
Okay.
I went up there and they needed a backline tech for Metal Fest because it was the year they brought back Milwaukee Metal Fest. So, or no, maybe it was before then. So they'd done like club touring, but this was like it was an international tour I went on with like no experience whatsoever on anything except for club tours. And like, I can work on guitars and gear like nobody's business, but anything else I'm just totally stupid about. And, I ended up going up to the rave and, they started me out as a stagehand, and eventually I did the backline for that festival. And I ended up being the crew chief and lead stage manager at that venue. And I learned how to do audio, lighting, video, everything. So rigging, I mean, I won't go up into a rigging grid, but
neither will I.
You can never pay me enough to get up in a grid, but I know how to hook the chains up and everything, and I'll do that all day. But yeah, that was like the biggest thing for me was once I learned that, I feel comfortable going onto a stage, and I do stagehand work even still at the arenas and stuff in Green Bay. So,
do you enjoy that? Do you enjoy that when you're not touring, doing local?
No,
you don't.
Nope. I tore my right shoulder last year. I had to have surgery earlier this year, in April. So I did that building a video wall, and I was like, nope, done with it. Totally done with it. And then I somehow got cleared to go back out on the road 3 weeks post-op, and I went on tour up until September when I was with Accept, and I retore my shoulder.
Yeah.
So I was like, yeah, I can't be doing crazy work like that. I can't work like that. It's a 9-month recovery. I started 3 weeks post-op like an idiot. I went to Rockville and did.
Oh my God, 3 weeks. You're not even healed.
No, like literally it was like the outside. I was out on the beach, like getting a sunburn on the incisions and stuff. It was so dumb. But yeah, so I kind of learned my lesson with that. But my first, I should say, career has always been horses. So I've been riding and training for 21 years. And so I do equine massage therapy when I'm not on the road. It's like sports massages for horses.
Wow. I'm going to pass this interview off to Lisa now. You're talking to her. She loves horses.
Really?
You give the horses massages for?
Yeah. It's like so sports. Cool. I mean, because they're athletes, it's sports massaging, and it's trigger point. And, that's always been my main passion, and even over music always. And, this last tour that I did, I was like, you know what? I think it's time that I just kind of fall back and recover my shoulder, because I can't seem to give myself a break with the pushing cases up on, it's usually like pushing cases up crazy ramps that get to me, or lifting things I shouldn't be lifting because I don't listen. So, but horses I can handle horses,
Oh, and that's
but
probably really good for your mentality too.
it
Like,
is,
just
it is. I
so
noticed
soothing.
I was like struggling with my mental health so bad. Just especially this last year, I'd say these last 2 years, it's been like a big struggle. And I'm like, well, what changes can I make? And it was very quickly, I was like, I know what change I need. I know what I need to bring back into my life that made me happy, for all these. I mean, ever since I could talk, I only talked about horses. So,
That's awesome.
um, yeah, I do that in my pastime. It's good money and it's a lot more enjoyable for me.
Yeah.
Eventually I might try to make it more of my full-time gig and then only take like a Chesney tour. But
Hey, that's perfect.
What do you like more, horses or people?
horses any day of the week.
That's easy.
Horses don't get in my face and scream profanities at me, where
Yeah.
generally on tour that ends up happening at some point or another. Horses will
Yeah.
bite me. I can deal with that. They can bite and kick. That's fine. They don't mean it.
Yeah. That's really interesting. We didn't know that about you. That's really
No, I
interesting to
go
find
back
out.
and forth. And Fred's got me into photography too. So that's
Yeah,
been
that
something
was my
we've been
next
doing.
question. Yeah, you also dabble in photography as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. I mean, I had taken photography classes in school. But I was like, whatever, it's fine. I don't really care about it. And it always kind of sucked to go with Fred to a show and he's out down in the photo pit and I'm just sitting by myself. So um, John had asked him to do photos for his next live album. And Fred felt bad for once that he left me up, way up far away from the pit. And he he asked me if I wanted to come down and he said, "Oh, just put the camera around your neck, pretend like you're taking pictures." I was like, "Well, why should I pretend? Like, can I actually take photos?" And he was like, "Well, if sure, like why not?" And the photo from that night ended up being John thinks that's going to be the album cover is a
Oh,
photo that I took.
wow.
Yeah. So
That's
for my birthday
awesome.
this year, he got me a new camera. Fred's just the nicest guy in the world, and he's too nice to me, that's for sure. But he got me a new camera and I took it out and I just shot Steel Panther with it. That was the first show I've done with it so far, but hopefully gonna do Zach
Yeah.
January 9th, I think, up at the rave.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just something that I like doing with him and it's something we can not argue about. So
Yeah, you're
'cause he
right.
knows more than I do.
You're right. He is one of the nicest guys in the business. And I don't think I don't think I've showed Lisa this picture. It's a picture of me and Fred
Oh yeah.
the night I
Yeah,
met him.
blonde hair.
Literally the night I met him. He was my band was opening for Black Label. He was teching for Black Label. And I was just talking to him about the Grail, which had not been found yet.
Yeah.
And then he's like, "You want to get a picture with this guitar?" And
Yeah.
he had a Polaroid and everything. And he's like, and then he was behind me. And then for the from that day on, we crossed paths up until,
Yeah.
I finally, we had a mutual friend and I reached out to him and he said, "Yeah, I'll do the show," but
Yeah.
he's a great guy. Great
No,
guy.
I love him to death. I love him to death. He's too nice to everybody
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah. And he
I
speaks
get on
highly
him
of
about
you, of
that.
your skills, he does speak highly of you and you got good skills, man. Like I said, I follow you
appreciate it.
on Instagram. Your relicking is really good and you've done some cool gigs. You have found out early that country music is the way to go. If you
Yeah.
can't get a huge arena tour with a legacy act, country
Yeah.
music is the way to go.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing is like it's always the legacy acts that are still relevant that I like doing
Yeah.
because like a Motley, I love Motley. They're the nicest guys. They're easy to work with. Def Leppard's the same way, but these are huge artists that have their career guys,
Yeah.
and but I've noticed it's usually like the ones that nobody really knows anymore that are always just the worst to me. Always the
Yeah.
worst. Always the worst.
It's
And I'm
that
like, man,
delusions of grandeur.
Have a
yes,
chip on
yes.
their
I don't
shoulder.
know what it is, but I'm like, guys, like you guys aren't even selling out a 500 cap room. Why are you being terrible to me like that?
Yeah, that
It just
happens. Yeah,
it
that
cracks
happens.
me up. It cracks me up. But yeah, if I could only do country for the rest of my career, I'm only doing country for the rest of my career. And I met a couple guys on the Chesney camp that are also like that, where they were big into metal and they got sick of them. And they're like,
Yeah.
nope, we came country and we've never gone back.
Yeah,
There's plenty of them out there.
it's a whole different world. I mean, like I said, unless you're getting a legacy band, I mean, really not just a legacy. There's bands out there. The majority of them out there treat you right. I
Yeah,
say this to Lisa a lot. Like, I just want to be treated like a human, you know.
exactly. Yeah. And
And
that's a lot to ask for.
I've been
That's
fortunate that
industry.
I've only crossed
Sad.
paths with one band that I didn't feel welcome in. It's
Yeah.
the only gig
No,
I've ever walked on.
I've had a handful of them, and I don't know, like, but it's always, I can tell before I even get there, and I will say it and say it and say it to Fred, and he's like, oh, I think you're just nervous about the gig. And every single time I'm right. I'm like, I don't know. I just don't have a good feeling about it.
Yeah.
So, and he's finally like, yeah, oh, you might have a good sense in that. Like, you know, I'm like, really? You don't think? I wonder why, you know. The only one that I mean, I've been excited about him too and thought it was going to go great, and it went super south. I mean, there's a band I did one gig for and got fired, got sent. Well, it was in this area, so I drove up to the gig, and it was a super cool gig. And the dude said to me, or he told his tour manager, and the tour manager was very adamant that I stay. And he said, well, I want someone who works for a big time band who's got a big time name. And he got that person. He got like the holy grail of guitar techs he could have gotten. But you know, it was like kind of like, huh, I guess my resume sucks, huh?
Yeah.
It just kind of felt like that. It just felt weird to me.
No.
But it's just part of it, you know.
No, I've seen your work, and it's you know, you're a good guitar tech, and
I appreciate that.
We're very fortunate to have you on this show.
Thank you.
To you.
I hope. Who are you working with now?
Me,
You know
I still work for Duran Duran.
Oh, no way! Are you guys coming up to Wisconsin soon? I gotta meet you in person. I feel this virtual stuff. I don't know. We got to trade insider secrets.
Always. No, that's who I work for. Duran Duran. You know, I've been going on 15 years with them.
Yeah,
I do other gigs.
Awesome.
I do other gigs well, but that's who I've. You know,
have they been your favorite? Who's your favorite artist you ever gotten to work for?
Should I say it? I will say it. I got to work for U2 when they did the Sphere.
Oh, that's badass. That's a lot of fun. That's super fun. Man.
I did that gig. Fred has my dream gig.
Motley,
Nikki.
Well, I can tell you, he's not allowed to clean his guitars. It shouldn't be your dream gig.
Oh.
You gotta really sanitize your hands after touching them.
Well, I haven't changed the string in about 13 years. My guy doesn't like new string, so
that's crazy to me. That is, I've had artists like that too. I'm like, I don't get it. At least like Nikki's like, yeah, you can change my string if you want. I mean, I don't think it's a requirement even. I think it's just like a whatever. As long as it turns on, I don't think he's too picky. But I'm always so jealous of Fred of that gig, man. I'm like, man.
Yeah. It's a good gig.
If you ever die, man, like you gotta like put it in writing that I get to take over for Nikki, or you do. We get to fight over it. Should be like a Fight Club type situation.
What do you have coming up?
I don't have anything coming up.
Nothing?
I'm wide open for 2025.
Good to
I've
know.
been like purposely not seeking out gigs. I've noticed that the best gigs find me when I'm not looking for them.
Yeah.
And it's usually someone's like, hey, you know, what do you think about doing this? And I do it. I like it. But yeah, I'm massaging horses is what I'm doing in 2025.
Hey,
as of right now.
Yeah. Where can people find you online?
At Guitar Tech Sara on Instagram. That's pretty much all I've got.
Okay.
So I don't do. I have a Facebook, but it's for family. You know. Yeah. Sara Higgins. If you want to look me up, it's Sara Higgins. You'll know. It's got a Les Paul in it.
Well, Sara, we really appreciate you doing this. Like I said, it's really our pleasure to talk to you.
Absolutely. I appreciate you guys reaching out very much.
All right. Our podcast is called Is Breakfast Included? And as you know, if we were having breakfast, what would you have?
Waffles. I love waffles.
Waffle House waffles? Because you're in Waffle House country, right?
I am a Waffle House. Well, I'm not in Waffle House country, but I grew up in Waffle House country, and
Yeah.
I will go to a Waffle House anytime, any day, anywhere. Doesn't
Yeah.
matter. The best one is definitely in Irwin, Tennessee, or Johnson City, rather. Anytime. You can ask Fred. I drug him to Waffle House so many times, and he is very sick of it because he hates breakfast food.
Yeah. I always say the best one is the one you're passing in the middle of the night.
Uh-huh.
And
When
it's
you're
usually
starving.
usually the W is missing and it says
Yep.
Awful House.
Or it's like there's nothing lit up and you just happen to kind of see that yellow on the inside and you're a little drunk still and you're kind of, that sounds pretty good. Or if it's near a Buc-ee's, I've seen a couple of those where they're like right across from a Buc-ee's, and those ones are really good too.
Yeah.
Anywhere where there's a fight that I can watch for free.
Definitely.
Well, Sarah, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate you doing this, and we look forward to seeing what you got next, man.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate it.
Right on. Sara Higgins. A lot of fun, right? We really appreciate her taking the time to stop by and talk to us. You can find out more about Sara at Guitar Tech Sara, and that's Sara on Instagram. Go check her out. Let her know that we sent you. While you're online, check out isbreakfast.com. You can link to our YouTube page. Make sure you like and subscribe. Rate and review our show on Apple Podcasts. And don't forget to check out our store and possibly pick up a shirt. All right, guys, we really appreciate all the support. Make sure you share our podcast with anyone you think might dig what we're doing. All right, guys, I am done. Have a great day. We'll talk to you next week.